Hi everyone, hope you're doing okay, hope you're keeping safe, hope you're keeping sane. I want to talk in this video about probably one of the most important things when it comes to gambling recovery, and that is the process of coming clean to loved ones and to those around you, be that husband, wife, partner, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, parents, siblings, whatever. And it's something that I touched upon a couple of times in my recent Q&A video. But I think actually it kind of deserves a little bit more attention and a little bit of an expansion on the topic, because it is, I believe, one of the most important things you can do when it comes to getting into recovery for gambling. Now, I will address two lots of people in this video really. People who have just come clean or are contemplating quitting gambling and coming clean to those around them, and also to those people who are maybe the boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or partner of a gambling addict, and you've just found out and you don't know how to deal with the information that you've been given. Obviously you're getting this from the perspective of someone who's been there and done that as a gambler, but also having spoken at length to my wife sort of after the fact, I have got a sort of bit of feedback really as to sort of what the other side of the coin is like. I will very quickly say thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel, has continued to support the channel. I know there's been a bit of a bombardment of videos lately. I just hoped that by putting those little snippets up, they can target a few more people, and people may be able to find a little bit of advice on the topics and questions that they are specifically interested in. I noticed when I put a few of them up, I did lose a couple of subscribers, so my apologies if you feel I've been badgering you with far too many videos, but the thought was there, the idea was good, and hopefully some of you are finding them helpful. So let's just sort of start with my experience, and that is when I came clean to my wife about my gambling problem. Now, I consider myself incredibly fortunate in the fact that my wife was supportive, and there is probably a reasonable reason for this. She has worked historically in addiction services, and not with gambling specifically, but she has worked for the alcohol treatment service for the NHS, so she has a background knowledge of addiction, and to that extent can probably empathise in some way to my experiences as a gambling addict. What I would say is don't expect that the person you're speaking to is necessarily going to understand. A lot of people, whilst they are probably aware that gambling can be addictive and that gambling addiction is a thing, their opinion may be, well, why are you choosing to do it? If you know it's a problem, why don't you just stop? And as someone, for example, who's never smoked cigarettes, I guess the same could be said for other addictive behaviours. If you've never partaken in it, if you've never had the problem or experienced the problem first or even second hand, then you may wonder why the person can't just make the changes that they need to make in order to stop this harmful cycle of behaviour. And so don't expect the person you're speaking to necessarily completely understand. So why do it? Well, I think personally it's an incredibly important, at the least, and I would say essential, almost certainly, part of your recovery. There was a thought in my head on many occasions that, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I won't tell my wife. All I'll do is I'll get myself straight. I'll stop myself from gambling. I'll do what I need to do to prevent myself from gambling. I'll recover, my finances will recover, I won't be lying or dishonest anymore, and we don't ever need to talk about it. Now, retrospectively, the problem with that was blindingly obvious. By not coming clean, by not actually being open and honest, I was enabling myself to continue the deceit and ultimately continue gambling. By coming clean, you then have that second set of eyes on you, and you also then have opened up and you feel a more moral and internal obligation to be truthful to the person that you're speaking to. Of course, gambling will have challenged that. But until you come clean, until you speak to people around you, and most specifically the people closest to you, then you are enabling yourself to continue the lies and continue the deceit. I've spoken many times before about the nature of gambling addiction being a very secretive addiction. If you are, for example, someone who struggles with alcohol, then there will be physical outward signs that you are in the cycle of that addiction. There will be short-term signs, for example, coming home drunk or smelling of alcohol, and longer-term physical signs that show that you are engaged in that sort of harmful behaviour. The same can be said, of course, for drug addiction, for smoking, and for most forms of chemical or substance abuse, there are outward physical signs that make it incredibly difficult to hide. Gambling, however, is very, very easy to hide. If you know what you're looking for, then you may notice subtle changes in that person. You may notice, undescribable mood swings. Of course, though, that's easy to cover up. Again, it's very easy to blame a gambling mood swing based on, you could say it's a bad day at work, or just blame some outside factor that is almost impossible to prove or disprove. But other than that, a few outward signs that someone is struggling from this gambling addiction. Of course, there's the financial situation. Maybe someone cannot afford to pay the rent, or are declining social occasions because they don't have the money. Again, though, financial hardships are often easily explained away with, I've got a problem with the car, I needed to replace X, Y, Z, I've got this unexpected bill that's come in. So explaining the reason that you're skint is often a lot easier than opening up and being honest about your gambling addiction. But I think it's very, very important, nay essential, that we break this cycle of dishonesty, this cycle of secrecy, if we are indeed to get into a recovery situation. I will, of course, as I did say in my Q&A video, I will put a real caveat on this, that whilst the person you're speaking to may become your best source of help and support, there is a very, very good chance that they might not. Ultimately, we have to be honest and say, look, we've deceived this person. In many cases, we've done things that are immoral, often illegal, or certainly, not positive behaviours in order to facilitate and support our addiction and our cycle of our behaviour. So there is no reason for this person to understand or to forgive us. Addiction might be the reason that we gamble. However, I'm a true believer that it's not an excuse for our behaviour. People often say, well, there was no gun put to my head, and that's very, very much the case. Whilst our behaviour may be heavily influenced by addiction, it is still our decision. It's still our free will to go and partake in that behaviour. So we can't expect the person we're speaking to understand, and we can't expect the person that we're speaking to forgive us. But, as I said earlier on, I think this is a step you have to take, because ultimately, if you don't take this step, as harmful and potentially harmful as it can be to relationships and to friendships, without taking this step, I don't truly believe you can ever get into a lasting recovery, because you're allowing that cycle of deception to continue. So let's address the other side. If you are someone who is watching this video, firstly, sorry for keeping you waiting. If you're watching this video because your partner or someone very close to you, a family member, has just come out and told you they are suffering from a gambling addiction, very, very first thing I would say, and the most important thing, is that you protect yourself. In the immediate term, that's going to be protecting yourself financially. Do not facilitate this person's gambling by allowing them to borrow money, and make sure that any assets you have, financial or otherwise, that they have access to are secured. Any joint accounts or anything like that, then make sure that you have sole access to those. If the person that we are referring to, the gambler, is not happy with these steps, then it may be that they're not actually ready and prepared to address the situation and take real action to formulate a sort of plan of recovery. And now I speak of this firsthand. The reason I eventually came out and told my wife about my addiction was because I had used money from a joint current account in order to gamble, and I wasn't able to replace that money. So yes, in this instinct, whilst my advice I believe is good, it does make me slightly hypocritical, because my hand, to some extent, was forced. Of course, I could have gone down the normal line and just made up yet another lie to cover my tracks, but I think on this occasion, this is almost the straw that broke the camel's back. It was one lie too many for me to tell, and the pressure and the weight of all this dishonesty became too much to bear, and selfishly, to some extent, I then opened up and spoke all about my problem. So in the first instance, if you are in that situation of being the partner or the person closest to the gambler, then make sure that you are financially protected. And protect yourself in terms of your relationship and friendship with this person. If they have a history of dishonesty and they are confessing to other dishonest or immoral or illegal behaviours, then make sure that you are protected in no way implicated in their actions. So whilst, I am ultimately very, very appreciative and incredibly thankful for my wife being so supportive in my recovery, for being understanding, if she wasn't, then I would have to accept that, because it was me and myself alone that got myself into this cycle of dishonesty, and any harm caused to our relationship would have been purely my doing. Yes, we can blame the addiction, but as I said previously, we are ultimately responsible, even as addicts, for our own behaviours. So ultimately, make sure you are secure. Okay, if you are happy to hang around, then as a recovering gambler, then I am being third party appreciative for that, because when you're in the cycle of this addiction, support is always going to be at the forefront of any recovery. Then be prepared to listen if at all possible, and make sure that they are actually formulating a plan to get into a lasting recovery, be that seeking counselling through the appropriate channels. There are some links, as always, in the description of this video. But also make sure they are doing what they say they're going to do. If they're going to hand over their finances to you, make sure they hand over all their finances to you. If they say they're going to self-exclude, then sit with them while they're on the laptop or whatever, self-excluding from the online casinos, signing up for GamStop. Go with them to the bookies to hand over the passport photos or whatever they do now. That used to be the method, but obviously it's been a while for me. There may be a more high-tech method of doing it now. But make sure they carry through on their promises and challenge them on any sign of dishonesty or deceit. Because, as I say, this is an addiction that thrives on secrecy. It thrives on dishonesty. And without full openness and without sort of questioning and discourse, then it's very easy for that gambler to slip back into negative habits. And don't be afraid to provide an ultimatum if they, start repeating the negative actions. They do, fail in their recovery. Lapses, unfortunately, are part and parcel of a lot of people's recovery. But if you discover that they are being dishonest or deceitful, then feel very free to provide them with that ultimatum, because that might actually be the motivation they need and the understanding of how serious the situation is to make a decision that actually one course of action, one path in their life is better than the path of least resistance. And as gamblers and as addicts, the path of least resistance in life is always going to be continue doing what you've always done. A gambling addiction doesn't come without its challenges, without its problems. But it's certainly easier than getting into recovery, initially in the early stages. But be assured that if you do choose to stand by them and you do hold them to account and they do stay in recovery, that both of your lives will continue to improve significantly over coming months and years. And for that, I wish you stay safe and stay sane. Very serious video, this one. Sorry it's been a bit waffly, but I really think it's an incredibly important thing to do. Like I say, without complete openness and honesty, then this secretive, this deceitful addiction can continue to perpetuate, and we are leaving ourselves open to lapses and to relapses if we're not completely open and honest with those around us. Take care, everyone, and I'll speak to you in the next video. All the best.